Okay, we're recording, so be polite. So last night I got word that it's supposed to take up to a month, and I only did this like a couple days ago, that YouTube approved my channel for monetization. Now, yes. So I started trying to figure out how to do this whole monetization thing because it's like, this is for those of you trying to figure out how to make money out there, you know, cooking or drag racing or whatever it is you do, and want to post online and become famous like me. But anyway, Hannah, so I was trying to figure out the monetization thing, and I sent a message to someone who makes more money than I do downstairs. And I was like, hey, I'm recording my lectures in class and, you know, other stuff that I make for students. Is it okay, you know, if I monetize that on YouTube where they run ads and get the revenue from that? Which I can't imagine that many people are actually watching the lectures. But for those of you that are, yeah, I was like, you know, might as well capitalize off that. Why not? So I went through the process of trying to, and it's pretty simple. They let you go in and add ads. Like, it's like, do you want to add ads, and what kind of ads do you want to add to your videos? And you can just kind of click. Most everybody just clicks on all the ads and mo money, mo problems, right? And then they you can go back and it just adds it to all of your videos for you. And so I get a message back, and the message says, that sounds highly unethical. I wouldn't do it.
Don't listen to them.
Like, you know,
snitched on you to Hinton?
you might get fired or something. And nobody said anything to the principal. But the person that I talked to, I've got a lot of faith in, so, or snitching on me to the county board. So anyway, I was like, you know, maybe I'll leave off monetization and ads for all of my in-class lectures and stuff, and the only ones that I'll add it on are the ones that I do at home. So if you see ads for my at-home videos, then they're on there, and I'll let you know how much I'm making off that, which I don't think will be a lot, but I'm pretty transparent. And then all of my school videos. It was suggested to me that, like, you know, maybe if you're donating all that money to the school or using it for the environmental club, that you can run ads on them and do that. So I don't know. I guess if I'm going to make our chicken farming operation, maybe if I'm going to, I guess it'd be better to make money and use it for that, or use it for the garden club than for nothing.
The person downstairs was just jealous of your fame, and they were like, no, I don't want him to be happy.
Well, I don't know. I don't really think it's that big a deal, but maybe it is an ethical issue. I don't know. I'm not gonna say too much more about it. But yes, I am monetized now, and there are ads on the other videos that I posted. So we'll see what happens. I'll let y'all know if I make any money.
How you get the play button, but we'll talk about it later.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna do a video on how to get the play button, and what we're gonna put on the play button. So yeah, we'll talk about that later. But today in Apes, we're on page 417-ish, somewhere in here, and we are talking about smog. Yummy. Somehow last period we got started off and went down this rabbit hole on the $15 an hour minimum wage, and I don't know how that happened, but we finally got back on track and got into the notes on photochemical smog. But
What page is this?
we'll see what happens.
417.
417.
Increased prices, but in countries that it has gone above $10, it hasn't increased prices that much. Minimum wages.
It's going above 10.
Yeah. But those countries are significantly smaller, and in Europe, so.
Imagine.
Like, how far above 10 did it go, though?
It was like at a McDonald's in Denmark or somewhere. They made the minimum wage like $12 there. And
What
the
was it
price
before
of
that?
Big Mac went up like 40 cents or something.
What was it before that?
It was the McChicken.
I don't know.
McRib.
I mean, I can't imagine it was below 8 or 9, though, right?
Yeah.
That's like a 30, what is that, a 50% increase? And you're talking about going to 15 now, which is almost 100%.
Yeah, we would be doubling.
I personally think that it's going to be an issue for, if it happens, and I suspect it will, that it's going to be an issue for small businesses, because I don't know how you double people's pay without increasing the cost significantly or reducing your workforce significantly. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You guys are young, and some of y'all, how many of y'all working here? Y'all work? Yeah. So, I mean, if you're one of the people who's working and making the $15 an hour, then, I mean, that may be fantastic for you. If you're one of the people who maybe loses your job because they can't afford to have you on, then that may be an issue. So I also think it's going to be an issue for small businesses, because if you're a big corporation, you probably have the means to absorb.
No value.
You have the means to absorb those extra costs. Or if you're like a Walmart, you can just say, well, if we're going to raise minimum wage, then I'm just going to have more self-checkout. And so I foresee that probably happening anyway in the future. I just would expect that to kind of hasten the process. My biggest concern as a teacher is, now for you guys, I know most of y'all in my AP classes plan on going to college or plan on at least going to some training or something after school.
I'm not investing in stocks. Just kidding.
Sure. And maybe you want to be a welder, asher, or whatever you want to do. But I suspect all of you will go do something after high school, if you're smart for the most part. But let's say that you are a general student who doesn't plan on going to college, or plan on going to Shelton or somewhere, or junior college, and you're like, well, hey, why not just 17 years old? I might as well just drop out now and get my $15 an hour job if that's what I'm going to be making. So my worry is that it's going to put some people in a bad position where they don't finish school or they don't go on and get more training, which I could see a lot of students who are doing that. I mean, there's AP students that I have now who are like, I know who are working. They're virtual learning, but they're working all day just to make money. So I can imagine if you double the pay, like you're kind of incentivizing people to do more of that. What do you think, Cheyenne?
I don't know.
I think it's
There's
crazy
just
to
so
wonder
much
how we got on this
technicality
in
in
the
the
last
last
period, and then you got on it this
Because he
period
told us
again.
about it, and of course I'm gonna say something.
Do you think if the minimum wage went up to $15 an hour, do you think that people who would make over $15 an hour would go up too? Or do you think they would stay the same?
Well, that depends on who you talk to. My argument was, so when I started out teaching in 2003 and 4, I started out like $29,000 a year. That was starting salary in Alabama. Now it's up since then.
That's awful.
But yeah, it's pretty awful. But if you're talking about $15 an hour, 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year, that's 31 grand.
Yeah.
So that's making more minimum wage than I was not too long ago starting out as a teacher. And somebody said the other night, I got in a kind of argument with somebody that was in college that used to be in this class, and they were discussing it, and I was like, if I was making like $16 an hour, if I was a social worker and barely making more than that, and went to college for 4 years and whatever other training, and then somebody working at McDonald's was drop out of high school making the same thing, like that would irritate me. And some girl came on there, she's like, I'm a social worker, I make $15.25 an hour, and I'm just happy with it. And I'm like,
She's a social worker and she makes nothing.
congratulations if that's your attitude. Maybe I'm too selfish and greedy. I guess that's the problem. But yeah, if I was making 16 or 17 an hour and I went to 2 or 4 years of school, then I think that would irritate me, that I'd put all that work and effort in and not be making much more than everybody else.
You gotta have poor people to have rich people, but that's not the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be. Some people think this is a Robin Hood scenario where, like, well, if you just raise everybody's minimum wage more, then all the corporations will have to take less money, and I just can't imagine that corporations are ever going to take less money.
Yeah,
They're going to cut more people out. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and money, like the worth of money will go down because more people have more money.
Yeah, that's called inflation. So the more, like, if you're Chick-fil-A and you have to pay people more, then stuff's going to have to go up some. Now, like Asher said, maybe it doesn't go up that much. That's just going to have to be something that kind of competition works out. So it will be interesting to see. Y'all can look back on this conversation whenever it hits that point, and what happens in the economy and with jobs. But I hope it's all unicorns and fairy tales, and everybody gets paid more, and everybody's got a lot of money and can do what they want to. And
The only true way to have equality is communism. Don't ever.
In theory.
Everyone just,
Are you gonna put that on your TikTok?
as soon as you get.
Now I want you to throw that out on TikTok and see what you get.
As soon as you get your paycheck, you give it to the government. The government takes all the money and gives it evenly to every single person.
In theory.
No.
Never.
And then they take all of it.
Yeah. So I know we got on politics here. Here's one thing I do want to mention since we're
It's small.
running on a new political administration and there's a lot of divisiveness in our country. I think that, I would ask all of you just to be a little more thoughtful and a little more objective when you talk to people who do not have the same viewpoints as you do. And I always like discussing politics, but I worry about the level of tribalism that we have in our country where, everybody's on one team or on the other, and then we get to argue about everything because everybody has totally different viewpoints when, I get the minimum wage. I think people should have better wages and be better prepared and have better jobs, but I just think there's a better way of going about it. So, but I think it's important to discuss those different viewpoints, and like environmentally, I tend to have more liberal viewpoints about protecting the environment because I think that's important for, the future. So you don't necessarily just be on one side or the other. Do what?
Because he teaches environmental science.
Well, that's why I like environmental science because of the importance, the significance, especially for you guys and
Teach it.
people as you get older. What'd you say, Asher?
I say you chose to teach it because you like it.
Actually, I did. I really pitched hard for this class after I went to a training one summer. So it has developed into something I appreciate. All right, so let's talk about smog, which is one of our main environmental issues. For us here, not so much. For you guys out there on the YouTube in the big city, yes. When is smog a big issue? What time of year?
Summer.
Why?
Because everyone's driving around everywhere and it's hot.
Okay, lots of people are driving and it's hot. And so the term in your notes here is called photochemical smog. Photochemical meaning?
Light, sun.
So there's light and there's chemicals and they're reacting and it's creating smog. Now, the 9th grade version of the math equation for smog is what? Smoke plus
CO2.
smoke plus fog equals
Okay.
smog. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be fog. It can just be like moisture in the air, high humidity, which we typically have here in the South. So you have lots of smoke, like Carson said, from cars and industry and whatever, especially in the summertime. You got a lot of people driving around doing stuff. And then you have lots of sunlight, which is the catalyst that's going to help this reaction go faster. And it produces a lot of smog. One of those main components of smog, if you skip down to number 9 there, nitrogen oxide is produced early in the day. Let's flip over to page 418. So as that nitrogen oxide that's produced early in the day from natural and also human sources, or anthropogenic as we would call it, ozone concentrations start to increase and they peak in the afternoon because that's when you have the most
Sunlight.
Dang, y'all are good. So much better than last period. All right, don't tell them I said that. And are higher in the summer because the ozone is produced between chemical reactions between. Well, they're higher in the summer because you have more energy, basically.
Air conditioner,
Um,
cooling your house.
I don't know that in the air conditioner's giving off stuff, but if you're everybody's using their air conditioner, you may be burning coal or natural gas nearby,
Wherever you're getting your energy from.
and that could contribute.
You
Yeah.
know what's a great video we could watch with this unit?
What's that?
The animated Lorax from 2013.
Yes, great, dude.
Is that the original one?
No, it's
No.
I want the original one. I like the original.
Oh, you're talking about the movie.
Yeah.
Don't want the one with Danny.
There was-
There's an original movie. It's like 20 minutes. It's
Yeah,
supposed to
I
be.
like that.
I don't know if I've seen the whole thing, but it's supposed to be really good.
No, we
You
don't
don't have to see
have
the
to.
whole
They
thing.
have
It's
it
from
in
the
the
60s or something.
No,
All right, the next day my kid gets sick, I'll leave the Lorax for you guys. Did I not? We not already watched that one time? I thought we showed that before Christmas.
That's good for the trees.
You were telling us.
Maybe I was showing that to my kids before Christmas when they had to come stay.
O'Hare was getting air.
He was going and getting it from the air.
O'Hare air, yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
Selling the air. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, not really funny. If you think about like California, have y'all seen that they've got so many like COVID patients? They're like rationing their oxygen levels. And which is interesting to think about, like we're limiting, we're having to decide, who gets auctioned, who doesn't in some places in America. So hopefully,
The American.
I read some disconcerting news from the COVID vaccine front in Israel, where they've given lots of vaccines that they said, like, initially after the vaccine was given, that people were still getting sick at about the same rates after they got the first dose. And then after 2 weeks, it was down to like 33%. So apparently this, the response that your body makes to that takes a little bit longer than I think they'd previously thought. And then you really need that second dose to have a good, immunity built up to COVID. So hopefully those vaccines get out soon and they are effective. All right, so yeah, the reactions between, we have nitrogen oxides and primarily VOCs, or volatile organics, okay? So in number 9, that's pretty much where this is going. And then they produce photochemical oxidants, which is a big fancy word I'm not worried about. I am worried about, that's a component of smog. And then the main one we're going to focus on is the ozone that's also produced and degrades lots of plants and plastics and other stuff. What?
The bad ozone.
The bad ozone. Where's the bad ozone?
At the surface.
Near the ground, yeah, near the surface, the troposphere. And then the good ozone is where? Stratosphere, which helps to block out those harmful UV rays. Good. All right, number 7, photochemical smog is formed when nitrogen oxides and volatile organics, which basically, we'll hit this again. Volatile organic compounds react with each other and produce that smog. They produce ozone. Like I said, the sun is a big catalyst in that formation. So the more temperature, the more energy you have, the more reaction that's going to take place there, the more ground level ozone is going to be produced. Number 8, many environmental factors affect the formation of smog. What's the main environmental factor?
Pollution.
Well,
Sunlight.
environmental. Sunlight, and also what else is going to affect your smog formation?
CO2. Fog.
Somewhat humidity. Yeah, the amount of humidity in the air. And then turn to 409 real quick.
That's bad for Alabama.
Y'all aren't going to get this other one here. Well, in Alabama, fortunately, we don't have that many people, so we got that much going for us. And if you're not in, like, maybe Birmingham, then there's not that much driving going on where I would expect to see a lot of fog. Now, what's the one city in the U.S. where you hear a lot about smog?
Los Angeles.
L.A.
What'd you
San
say?
Diego.
Somebody say Chernobyl.
I said Chattanooga.
Who said L.A.?
I did.
L.A.
Yeah, so normally we think of smog, we think of LA. All you people out in LA, y'all can comment. Maybe y'all cleaned things up since the last time I read about it. But typically, LA has a few things going against them. What are they?
It's
A lot of homeless people.
Well, that's
I-
All the YouTubers live.
I'm primarily focused on smog here. So you have a lot of people, and how do they get around?
they drive. But they
Yeah, y'all seen these big freeways with like 10, 12 lanes, and they're full, and then just people are driving everywhere. So it's LA is really spread out. And then it's hot. A lot of times in summer, really, really hot. You got the ocean next to it, so you do have some moisture for the fog component. And then you also, what is the natural geographic feature that
They're
puts
like
them?
in a valley.
Yes, so they're in kind of a bowl. You have hills all around it, and you have the ocean on one side, essentially. Now, for us here in Alabama, we have a city like this close by, Chattanooga. Now, Chattanooga is not that large, but they had a very, very bad air pollution problem back in the 60s and 50s and 60s. And so basically what was happening, if you've ever been to Chattanooga, it's like super clean. I love going to Chattanooga. It's a really nice place, and there's a lot of stuff to see there and do there. And you're kind of up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. But like I said, back in the 50s and 60s, they had a lot of industry, producing lots of pollutants. And they're in a similar situation. You have hills all around it that are pretty tall. And so when the air is cool and you're producing lots of pollutants, where's that air going to hang out?
It's gonna stay right there.
It's going to hang out in the bowl. And so it's kind of the same thing with LA. You had lots of air pollutants because of that natural geographic landscape that you have.
We got one tidal wave, and it's gonna be like the next Atlantis. It's gonna be underwater.
One tidal wave?
Atlantis.
What are you talking about?
Atlantis was never real.
Atlantis is real.
Whoa.
How did that have anything to do with Chattanooga or smog?
He's talking about L.A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the
Why'd you say it?
One large tsunami, you meant. I got you.
One large title.
Okay.
I didn't.
Um, if you actually, speaking of tidal waves, totally off topic. Y'all are familiar with Livingston? If you go down like a little bit south of here.
The Dutch steak restaurant.
Yes.
No, not Livingston. Sorry, Demopolis, which is about an hour south here. If you go down below Demopolis, there's a place where you can, on the river there, the Alabama River, where you can actually see where some of the, it's called the KT boundary, where the dinosaurs went extinct. And so basically what you have is, it's kind of at an angle. And so what happened when that meteor hit out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of, what was it? Yeah, off the coast of Mexico. The wave sent out and it pushed up a lot of, like a big tidal wave up this way. And so like it went really far inland. And so you can actually see some of that area where that boundary between where the dinosaurs died out and everything above that, and also where some of that debris and stuff builds up. So I went out there with the Alabama Paleontological Society, and they did like a fossil hunt out there one time. But so yes, a large meteor or some other disaster, maybe a big earthquake, could cause a large tidal wave. We hope our friends in LA don't get taken under though. Yeah. So you guys stay safe out there.
I, in 2017, went to California, and I was on the St. Marina Pier, whatever the famous one. Literally an hour before Logan Paul got there with his flash drive that had the second verse of The Fall of Jake Paul on it, he threw it over, and I watched the vlog the next day. I said, no, I was so close to meeting him. No.
So you want to make who? You want to meet who?
Logan, I wanted to meet Logan Paul in 2017.
Is he kin to Rand Paul?
I don't even know who you just said.
His father is Greg Paul.
Okay.
His brother is Jake Paul.
All right, let's get back to work here. So.
Yeah.
Lots of info about smog. Number 9, number 8, the environmental factors we talked about. Number 9, nitrogen oxide is produced, and ozone concentrations increase, peak when? Afternoon, we talked about that one. Number 10, volatile organic compounds, such as, so on page 4, sorry, there's a page with all these listed out. On page 414. Volatile organics can result of like fumes given off from like gasoline or other fuels. So don't hang out right by the gas pump too long. We talked about paint. Did we talk about the paints yesterday?
Yeah.
So like when you're painting your kid's bedroom, or if your wife's pregnant and you're painting in your house, make sure you use the low VOCs. You do not want to kill her brain cells. Don't drink paint either, or huff it.
Like the one
It kills the brain cells. All right.
Don't.
So anyway, these volatile organics, and one that also I bet you haven't heard of, there are some natural sources of volatile organics. Trees are a natural source. They talk about turpentine in your book. I actually made a video on, what was that video I made the other day with the wood burning stove, and I mentioned like lighter pine. I don't know if any of y'all saw that.
Yeah.
But that's formed from that sap, and so some of those, they say if you're around pine trees and fir trees and citrus trees, there's like these turpentines, there's these chemicals that give off, and so those actually fall into that volatile organic compound scenario. Hope all that pine rosin doesn't mess me up. And then, I don't know where that page went, but I'll just talk about it. One other big issue with volatile organics is, hold on, 415. Okay, so what happened back in 2006 that was so bad? We had a natural disaster.
Hurricane Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina, good, Michael. So the people in Louisiana and around that area, you know, a lot of them were displaced from Hurricane Katrina, and so FEMA, where did they put them? What did they provide for them to stay in? Trailers. There were FEMA trailers, these big white travel trailers. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I lived in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and we had to stay in a FEMA trailer in 2006.
That could explain a lot then. So, the FEMA trailers, they wound up being very bad. You know why? They started getting people out of them pretty quick.
They had lead.
No.
They had something.
They were made really quick, and so VOCs, where's that page it's highlighted under? I can't
We
remember.
made pancakes in the morning. And Isaac kept saying he was Peter Pan and jumping around.
That's disturbing. Anyway, so
There's pictures of it.
in building materials like presswood that they use in a lot of walls, what they use in the walls of those FEMA trailers, or like countertops where they mash them together. I don't know if you've ever seen like, if you're not talking about granite countertops, it's just wood mashed together, or cabinets that's just glued together like plywood. When that stuff gets hot, like those FEMA trailers, imagine they get really hot, and that glue in there starts breaking down. It gives off what chemical? That's super bad for you. We use it to preserve animals.
Gasoline?
Formaldehyde.
That's
Gasoline?
also in vapes.
Come on, Porter. So it actually gives off formaldehyde. So these formaldehyde levels were really high, and so like as soon as they kind of figured this out and people were getting sick, they were getting respiratory issues. They started getting people out of them and getting rid of them. I've seen some still for sale, like people use them in hunting camps and stuff like that, but it's not something you would want somebody to live in like long term just because of the respiratory problems. Yeah.
Does vaping hurt the environment?
It hurts your environment.
I would suspect vaping probably is like cigarettes. The number one impacted thing would be people around you. I'm still waiting. You guys maybe 10 or 15 years down the road before we really know. But I'll be curious to see like secondhand vaping an issue, like secondhand smoke. My grandmother died. She never smoked a cigarette in her life, but she died because my papa smoked. So she died from secondhand smoke. So I don't know. I'm curious to see as to what that actually winds up causing in the future.
I could never reduce it every day.
I didn't say anything about that. Now you might need to check his liver out though.
He got an 85.
Well, my grandpa smoked from the day he was 16 till the day he was 82 when he died. Well, he didn't last a few months because they stole his cigarettes, so he stopped. But anyway, he smoked that whole time and wound up dying for Alzheimer's disease. But my grandmother died 14. They were the same age when they got married. She died when she was 68, 14 years before him, because he smoked. So it's not always, some people are, and then some people like dip for a couple of years and they get mouth cancer and they have to have half their mouth taken off. So, some things affect people in different ways. So,
That guy died because his wife shoved him downstairs. She didn't want to deal with him anymore.
What were
who?
you
The
talking
one
about?
that drank a lot of alcohol, his
Uh,
wife shoved him down the stairs.
When he was 85?
Yep. he was
Did she
85.
go to jail?
They were living alone in the house. No, she didn't.
That's not how I want to
Still
go.
see her sometimes, Porter?
No, she's dead.
Oh.
Okay, that's sounds like a forensics file episode. All right, number 11. So you need to know that formaldehyde can be given off from the breakdown of those chemicals, and that's another type of volatile organic. Number 11, photochemical smog often forms in urban areas because of the large number of cars and factories.
People.
Yeah, people, but it's the cars and factories that. Hey, I will say this: it's not just people, Ashton. If you compare LA to New York, they have similar populations, but you don't see smog in New York like you do LA, and there's a couple reasons why.
No factories there.
Well, even in the summertime, New York can get pretty warm, but that's not the big reason. What?
The people in New York, they pretty much walk everywhere.
Yeah, so people in New York, most of them are walking or they're using the subway or bikes or like the trains, right, or buses. So, whereas in LA, you see a lot more and a lot of walking. Like, right, if you see movies and stuff in New York, you got a ton of people walking everywhere. So in LA, it's kind of like around here where we're more spread out and everybody's driving place to place, and so you have a lot more exhaust going out. And in the summertime, it is a little bit hotter, which is also going to contribute. So it's not. My point was, it's not just a people thing. It has a lot to do with what you're doing. And in Europe, I would suspect you'd see a lot less smog now than you would back 50 years ago because there's less factories. They're much more environmentally friendly in terms of what they're using for energy, and also people use a lot of mass transit. Not many people drive. All right, number 12. Photochemical smog can be reduced through the reduction of?
Sunlight.
Well, if VOCs are causing it, and I don't think we can reduce the sunlight, Asher, what else can we do?
We can make a man-made ozone layer.
All these are incorrect.
VOCs, you're reducing the volatile.
Hold on, Cassie.
Reduce the smoke.
How do we do that?
Less factories.
Yeah, let's
So, yeah, ideally you wouldn't want factories in the middle of town where it's going to build up there. Also, I think cars is probably the biggest one we could go after. Like, what kind of cars are people driving? What's the, Atlanta, I think it's throughout Georgia. I can't remember if it's just Atlanta. Somebody on here, you can comment if you live over there. They have emissions testing for their vehicles. So you see all these rednecks running around, and I don't want to like stereotype anybody, sorry, but I came from a redneck place, I could say that. So where they've got a big truck, and then there's a ton of smoke coming out of the back of it. So you can't drive around in Atlanta like that, because every year you have to get an emissions test to make sure that you are within a certain parameter, so that you're not releasing, like, y'all ever get behind a truck or something, or a car, and just like it's like you can't hardly breathe because of all the fumes and stuff coming off of it, because there's something wrong with it. So that's why they have to get a test. And I can't remember if it's just in the Atlanta metro area or if it's statewide, but I'll have to look that up. But that's a way to reduce it. So you can still have people driving and going places, but you have less pollutants. All right, and then number 13, photochemical smog can harm human health in several ways, including what?
Scarring in the lung.
Yeah, lung and heart disease are ones that I saw quite a bit come up, and that's two of the major causes of air pollution related deaths worldwide.
Nerve damage.
I guess if you had, how would it be nerve
Nerves in
damage?
your lungs.
I don't know about that. Let's go with some more practical ones. Asthma, emphysema. I guess if you had enough of it, like we see in this video in Mongolia. Coughing, wheezing. Pneumonia, bronchitis, these are things that are exacerbated by pollutants in the lungs. So you're putting stuff in your lungs that is harmful, and it's going to make it difficult for your immune system. Yes?
We use more nuclear energy. I thought that only emit, they don't really emit.
To reduce the smog? Yeah. So somebody mentioned, like we were talking about, like I said, the politics stuff last period, and somebody mentioned the Paris Climate Accord, since that's like an environmental topic. And I think yesterday, Trump kind of backed us out of that, and then Biden, I think, signed an executive order to go back in. Here's what I would say about that. I don't know the nations that signed that, how committed they are to actually doing all those things. That's a good question. From what I understand, even if everybody buys in and does that, the temperature reduction is said to be about 1 degree Celsius, I think. So, which is significant, talking about worldwide, but there's always a cost benefit there. And then I know in the U.S., our main concern, I think, just because of our productivity, is countries like India and China, where you have two very large countries that make lots of stuff. And if they don't buy into these, like the Kyoto Protocol, where you agree to reduce CO2 emissions, and they're using cheap energy and fossil fuels, and we say, hey, we're not going to use it, then how do we keep up competitively, jobs wise and production wise? And then what was the other thing you just said? Gosh, I forgot. What'd you say, Michael?
What is it about?
The emission. Oh, nuclear. Who said nuclear? Yeah, and so even if, like, maybe what they're doing in the Paris Climate Accord, maybe trying to do all the renewables that we talked about, wind and solar, maybe that's not as effective as you producing more nuclear. So those are things I think we have to look at closely. I think we always have to err on the side of caution of how can we save the planet, but we also have to make sure that we are producing things that people need, food, products, goods, and we have to maintain some balance there. So and I also worry that sometimes things are done just for political gain. So we need to make sure that they're being done and enforced if we're going to sign on and do things. So you guys try to be objective. You try to be thoughtful in your political viewpoints and the things that we agree to. Like the guy said in the video, what if Germany had, y'all keep out your notes to the smog. What if Germany had said, 20 years ago, instead of investing in solar and wind, we're going to go all nuclear and try to be energy efficient in 20 years where we don't produce any air pollutants. They might be there at this point. So do you think they would trade what they have now for nuclear? I don't know. These are questions we will have to, you guys will have to answer. Y'all are young and we are the world. We are the children.
Thanks, Michael. But not Michael.
Yeah, so we're going to finish in the Mongolian video. Y'all take care.